Well, Catherine Concilio, it is so nice to see you. I'm uh, used to being able to see folks face to face, but it's nice to um, see you. And before we get into a little bit of the chamber music at the barn, I thought I'd ask a little bit about what you've been up to, how you've been doing, because normally we would see you at the barn in the summer, but we all know something, the strange pandemic happened. So how are you doing and what have you been up to?
I am doing fabulously, is the truth. I am one of those people that actually thrived during all the stay-at-home stuff. I mean, there was an initial 3-week panic of technology training exploding in my brain because I am in my 7th decade. But I actually figured out a lot of stuff. I think it kind of made me a better teacher for my big classes because I had to figure out how to use technology. And we actually found a wonderful new music software out of Australia that's called Aurelia. And it's a really comprehensive learning software with interaction, and teachers can write drills, they can write tests, and all kinds of very specific instructions. So it was a kind of like the dream tool that I think we had all been kind of looking for. And like Zoom and Amazon, Aurelia is one of those companies I think that just really thrived with the pandemic because of remote learning. So that and a lot of other things, once I got the technology down, I do think it made me a better teacher. And I was I was really happy all spring, teaching at home and going to bed early. And I think that if there was a project for myself besides just sleep, it was yoga. Something I've started in my 40s and had gotten away from because I was just too busy. So, the Y had all these online classes. So I started doing yoga every day and Pilates, and, it's good. I'm really, really happy. I feel great. I think I'm the healthiest I've been in a long, long time. So I can't say I'm grateful for COVID, but
Yeah, no, I totally get it. As someone that's sometimes was at the same place at the same time in two different markets. It's kind of crazy to do that, but it is sort of finding out what's important, but also being able to take care of ourselves and set up those schedules. I was able to catch up and stay in touch with friends, seeing where you're, talking to Manny and Andrew and Keith. And I think this is a lovely way to sort of engage. And, we would have seen everyone at the barn. You have this lovely summer, and yet we can't connect traditionally. Are there some plans you could share that, how do you move forward? How do we plan for these sort of things?
Well, next summer, 2021 is our 25th anniversary. And we probably for the last, 15 or 20 years, we have this amazing grant writer, Connie Bonfi, who has about a 99.9% success rate with NEA grants. And so we had gotten a grant for this past summer, 2021, and it was Paraguayan classical guitarist Berta Rojas. And we were so excited to have her come and interact. And of course, you and most people who know me know that I've had an increasingly wonderful relationship with a lot of Paraguayan musicians and schools. And so we were looking forward to that, having her work with our camp. The NEA thankfully deferred that, so we'll get that money in 2021. But we had already started writing our grant. We write the grants in February and usually find out in November. So we already had a grant in the pipeline for 2021. And, probably one of the most fun things about my job is that I get to do Well, I get to do things that I believe in and that I like. And for a long time, I've been a fan of the Scottish fiddler Alcidair Fraser. And Natalie Haas is a wonderful young cellist that plays with him. And they've been a duo for many years now. I don't know, maybe 15. And, you know, the other thing I think this position that I've been in has taught me is like, reach really high. Like, don't be afraid of, like, there's this person that you really admire or adore, and would they ever answer an email from you? Well, heck yeah, you know? So anyway, we wrote the grant for Alcidair Fraser and Natalie Haas to come. And I feel very confident that we're going to get the grant, and to have that caliber of folk music, Scottish fiddling. He's like the most famous Scottish fiddler, living Scottish fiddler. And Natalie Haas is a Juilliard trained cellist that has developed all this really cool percussive stuff that she does. And so I know there'll be a huge hit for our, not only our camp, but for our audiences. So to have 2 NEA grant, you know, performers in one summer is amazing. And then we'll have our standard set of concerts. We're, you know, planning on bringing the concerts that were planned for 2020 into 2021. And, you know, one of those significantly involves you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We're going to have some fun and do, you know, some different rep, and there's going to be a kid show with this that I'm really excited to me, that's a big part of classical music. It's been around forever, and, you know, every generation gets a little worried about audiences and care and caretaking, and to me, it's so important to involve those young people. And I know that's, you know, been a big part of the barn, whether it's, you know, bows at the barn and working with the string programs and whatnot. It's lovely to see.
Yeah, I can't wait.
You know, you mentioned that next year's a anniversary, and I thought it would be, I have sort of a 2-part question for you, because what we do is not easy, and you're talking about grants and funding. There's always, you know, some sort of struggle, whether it's, you know, trying to reach folks or trying to, you know, have funds and whatnot. Over the time, you know, we're in a difficult period now. Who would have guessed? You know, they're like, oh, we can't have an audience. But the first part of the question would be, has there been a point where you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You know, has there ever been a point you're like, oh, can we ever get out of this? Can we do this? You know, there've been in the past struggles that you've been like, how can we overcome this?
There definitely have been struggles for our organization, I think, and those took many faces, whether it would be staff or whether it would be budgetary concerns. But I'll tell you, the thing that's really made chamber music at the barn probably work is a lot the relationship that I have with Bob Scott. We were very lucky, or it was a serendipitous moment when we met. You know, my mom had played lots of weddings and funerals that Bob sang for, so they had known each other for years. But then I played this wedding, it was a gig out there, and literally like over the table when the musicians got a break, you know, and I was stuffing my face, and I was like, you know, this seems like it'd be a really good place for a concert series, and you know, the rest is history. But the truth is, Bob has been so passionate about chamber music that he has just done everything and things beyond his power to make it work. So as a partner, I'm very fortunate that I got to do all the creative artistic stuff, and he had all the expertise when it came to the board and the business ideas that he had brought forward. So the truth is, there was never a point where we thought we'd just quit. There just wasn't. I think because we both believe in it so much, but sure, there were times that we just needed to, walk away and take a breath and come back and find the next solution, I guess I'll say.
Well, the kind of fun second part of the question, sort of a follow-up, is, have there been these life-changing moments? Are there places you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful? Were sort of like these best moments in the last, 20 years, that 25 years, and part of this to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got to do this. I can't believe this was my job over the summer.
Well, I can't say I like all of the stuff that I have to do all year long to prepare. I've gotten good at it, I think, but I will answer your question. But I was thinking earlier today, when I started, I didn't know anything about creating a program booklet and soliciting marketing. And the graphics designer that I worked with didn't either. And I remember literally sitting for days out, not just hours, but days, like 3 or 4 hours for multiple days, working on a program booklet. And I think maybe even the first couple of years you wrote the program notes for us.
I might have, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, being out there and recording. We we're doing some stuff, but yeah, I think maybe so.
I think so too. And it was before there was software that could collate, pages, or you could upload an ad, and she literally had a room with big easels and boards, and she would have gotten, a print ad, and she would cut it with a razor blade, and then she'd mount it, and she'd create each page. And then I think they had to be copied, each page. So it's come a long way, what I do behind the scenes, for sure. And I had to learn every step of the way. How do you create an ad? How do you create press releases? How do you name concerts? All of that. And then certainly just getting good at contacting people, creating rehearsal schedules, and doing that with some kind of a competent knowledge of how much time each piece is going to take, because they're not all created equal. So that, I don't like all of that stuff, but I do it because the reason is the concerts that we get to play. So I will tell you, most of the performances and the music that I get to perform in, that it goes well. I'm so grateful. I've gotten to play a ton of chamber music, not only string quartets, but all different kinds of music. And I don't know, if I had not been in the position I was in, where I programmed myself to play on almost every concert, if I hadn't been in that position, I wouldn't have gotten to perform all of that stuff. That's 25 years of concerts, sometimes 3 repeaters. That's it was everything from 12 to 15 concerts per summer. That's a lot of concerts. So yeah, that's my reward. It's, and I have a couple of favorite pieces, probably, that it's just like, oh my gosh, I can die now because I got to do that. Actually, I kind of had that moment with the symphony a couple of years ago. We were doing Beethoven 9 to finish the season. And, 40 years I've been playing Beethoven 9, right? And it's like, okay, we'll do it again. we'll do it again. But that time we played it, not only was everybody on their best behavior and playing, and I really love our music director, Maestro Hagee. It was special because I thought to myself, maybe this is the last time I'm going to play Beethoven 9. And so I wasn't sad. It was like grateful.
Yeah. And to me, you teach, you work with young people and folks that are, on that journey, and you're, principal of the symphony, and this allows you to play great orchestral works. I know just a few years ago you played Jennifer Higdon's lovely viola concerto, which is, again, a masterpiece. I almost thought you were going to start talking about that when you're talking about a bucket list of dream pieces. But, it's so intimate what you do at chamber music at the barn. It's just so lovely to, be able to add that, portion. And so, that makes things complete. This is somewhere in Mays, Kansas. It's not Vienna, it's not New York City, but you get the feeling of New York. You get that wonderful Philadelphia sound with Jennifer Higdon chamber pieces, and you get that, old school Beethoven. And the great thing is that you're not just serving up every Spohr quintet or every, Beethoven piece. You go out and find new works, you find different things, all these themes. It's got to be a joy to put all that together.
Yeah, it's a joy. But again, depending on your fatigue level, and my fatigue level was pretty high until COVID hit. But again, I'm grateful for the opportunity. And believe me, I realize how lucky, how fortunate I am. I get to not only choose a repertoire, I get to pick my friends to play it with. And so all those years before of, being a guest at other festivals I was invited to, and there were some doozies of just musicians that I would not say were terrific, but had the attitude like they were terrific. Ugh.
I think you have this terrific, awesome sound, and I know that comes from you. But I know folks kind of like to know a little bit about instruments. When I, talk to folks, I often say, "Can you tell us a little bit about, when we hear you on stage? Could you tell us a little bit about your viola and about your bow that you play?"
Oh my gosh, love to, because it's a really good story. So I went to grad school and had the good fortune through my teacher, Jeff Irvine, who's at CIM. He had started working with a Japanese luthier named Izuka. And I somehow got up the money. I think it was just a couple $1,000s to buy an Izuka viola when I was an undergraduate. Well, it turns out this viola, was fabulous. I got my first full-time orchestral jobs on that viola. I got into the conservatory with mostly a full scholarship on that viola. And then I believe I had just graduated and I was teaching at a summer camp north of Boston. That viola was stolen. And I had just gotten the position as a artist teacher at Rice at the Shepherd School of Music through my teacher, Heidi Kesselman. She wanted me to go down and live there and teach half of the lessons, and she would come down twice a month and teach the other half because I'd already been her assistant. Anyway, that was devastating because I was going off to my first big teaching job and I didn't have a viola. Fortunately, I had instrument insurance. It was a terrible time. And I didn't have a good instrument for a couple of years. I bought something that turned out to be something I didn't like. And, but my teacher had a viola called Max Freer's viola. He was Hungarian that was still, I think at that time he might have been living in New York. Anyway, in the 1970s, he had made this viola for Heidi that had the best sound in the whole world. And the reason the viola is so problematic, it would need to be 18 inches long, which you wouldn't even be able to play it if it was proportionate to the pitch it represents. The violin and the cello are proportionate to their pitch. The viola can't be, and that's why there's so many terrible sounding violas in the world, because they just can't be big enough to support a really beautiful sound. So anyway, Max had this idea working with my teacher to move the proportions of the viola so that the bridge was further away from the end of the viola, a little closer to the fingerboard, and that allowed your finger spacing not to be just horribly wide. And then he also made the viola really fat as far as the ribs and really wide at the bottom. Well, what this did is it created a much better sounding box for the instrument. And when my teacher would play her viola on the C and G string, I mean, all of the students, we were just like, oh, I've never heard a sound like that. So she worked with Max to make that viola, and we always called her viola the mother viola, right? So anyway, many years down the road, I actually got the money to commission an instrument. And I will tell you, I had to take cash down in my socks on a plane to Miami Beach. And meet Max. He'd left New York by then. And so I got my Freer's viola. So, based off of the pattern of the mother viola, and I loved it. And I played it on it for many years, but it never was quite as good as Heidi's viola. Then I had been at WSU maybe about 5 years, and Heidi had decided, well, she had actually remarried, and now had the funds to buy the viola of her dreams. There was no financial limit, which she did. She put the mother Freer's viola up for sale in Washington, D.C. The quartet, Fairmount String Quartet, was playing a concert in the gallery, National Gallery, maybe, in Washington, D.C. I heard that the viola was at Weaver Violin Shop in Bethesda, Maryland. So I made a trip there. I've got a Freer's viola, but it's not the mother viola. I walked in, I looked at that viola, I played a couple notes on it, and I said, yeah, I'm taking this. It was up for sale, my God. So, I came home with 2 Freer's violas, and I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. But they were so much in demand, and her students were all so well connected. I sold my viola within probably a month, which is a very short time to sell a viola. Then I had the money to buy her viola. And I knew that was the viola for me in my life. And it is. I dearly, dearly love it. Max, the story was that when World War II broke out, Max left Hungary with as much wood as he could, literally on his back, carrying it, getting on a boat, somehow ending up in Canada. And he stayed there for probably 20 years or something. And then he finally ended up coming to New York. He worked in the Wurlitzer shop in New York for many years before starting his own luthier shop. And his son, Nick, actually lives in Coopersfield, New York. I think the Baseball Hall of Fame is there.
That sounds right, yeah.
I've visited him, and Nick is still working. In fact, there's a great YouTube video of Nick, and it's actually very sad because he talks a lot about his father, Max, who made my viola, and learning from his father, and that this was so much a generational family art that was passed down, and it's stopping with his generation. but it's a really interesting, video. And we don't always think about, that, but, and there are a lot of young new makers, but he had this direct, lineage. So.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know that, actually. I'm so glad I asked. I'll follow up anything about your bow that you particularly like,
I am kind of in bow peril is the truth. I had this bow that I played on for 35 years. And when I was preparing the Jennifer Higdon concerto, I realized that bow, even though I loved it, it was not giving me the kind of power that I needed. When you're preparing something that you've got to project over an orchestra. And I actually had, a few years ago with some award that I had gotten, I bought the most expensive Coda bow or carbon fiber bow that they made. And I just wanted to know what it was like, see if I could actually throw it across the room and it didn't break. Was it worth $1,000? Probably. Anyway, in front of my class, as I was preparing, I was, performing for them. And I said, well, let's just try, a little experiment here. And I think it was the second movement, the kind of scherzo movement. And I played part of it on my expensive bow. And I played part of it on the carbon fiber bow, the Coda bow. And they were, just as far as being loud and articulating, it won the prize. And so I'm actually still using my carbon fiber bow. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, what works, right? Here and an extra bonus question. I'm John Clare at SiriusXM and at Classic 107.3, but my checkered past was at Wichita State. You can blame so many things. And I was curious, how did you survive having me in violin class where I drove away not only Andre Grabietz, Ernie Salem, Juan Bin Yim, David Perry, and probably pretty hard on Nancy Luttrell and Jim Caesar's health. And only after I left did a violin professor stick around for more than a few years.
Well, John, I'll tell you what, it was well known that you didn't really like to spend time in the practice room. It was also well known that you were intensely passionate about music and that you loved the idea of playing music. And you are and were always the most genuinely wonderful and lovely person. But I'm going to tell a story on you, okay? I'm going to tell a story. Is about a jury, which for people who don't know what juries are, they're the end of the semester examination, and each student plays whatever it is that they have been working on, and technical exercises, repertoire. So we were in Wiedemann Hall and John Clare came out, and you, I think, actually had been practicing that semester. And you were studying with David Perry, and you loved David Perry, and I think you worked the hardest for him of anybody. And you had prepared a portion or all, I don't remember, of the Bach Chaconne for solo violin. Do you remember this? Okay.
I do, sadly, yes.
Are you going to allow me to go on and tell the story?
I will, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so John is up on stage giving it everything with his heart, and it probably is the hardest you ever have worked. And if anybody knows the Bach Chaconne, it's very dramatic. And on a particularly passionate up bow, you played and your bow went underneath the strings and got stuck between the bridge and the fingerboard. And when that happens to a violin, there is a very loud sound. And it is quite unsettling. We'll just say that.
Yep.
But you did it with grace. You know, somehow it takes a little bit to untangle that bow, and you did it, and you went on, and the faculty was working extremely hard not to show their amusement. We'll just put it that way. Because we knew that you had practiced, but got a little carried away. We'll just say that.
Shocking. I know that I practiced a semester. Oh man. Yeah. Well, I luckily I can play the Chaconne recordings.
Without being in peril. Yeah.
Yes.